Dystopia warning, obviously. As many of you will be aware, there was a horrific incident in Southport just a few days ago in which 4 young little girls, BB King, Elsie Stankham and Alice Da Silva Aguiar, all had their lives taken in a brutal way. Their dance teacher is currently in a critical condition along with a number of other people. You'll also be aware that afterwards violence broke out. A town reeling from young girls having their lives taken by male violence had to deal with their communities being smashed up by renter mob and endure yet more male violence. Almost as if that's actually the problem, isn't it? Early on after the incident, the Telegraph decided to reveal that the boy's parents were from Rwanda, even though he was British born. Then the speculation started, an Arabic sounding name was invented. Then all the usual hate mongers started circulating that, along with what is widely considered to be Russian disinformation. There were former, GB News presenters, rejects, people like Tate, Tommy Robinson and Reform MPs whipping up a frenzy online of hatred and anger despite their assumptions having no factual basis. Now, what I'm interested in is the cause of this. How did we get to this? You see, much of the hysteria about immigration is entirely man-made, generated by the right and the far right. It's not a case of attitudes organically changing. It's attitudes being deliberately generated and moulded. With a new Labour government that says it's committed to public service, not self-service, many of these people feel that they're losing their power, what power they did have, very quickly. We no longer have a Prime Minister or ministers willing to whip up division and hatred. In fact, Starmer made a statement tonight that was focused on collaborative effort, dealing with the perpetrators of the crimes, and calm. You see, the reason why the Tories and other opportunists like Farage created this hysteria around immigration, much of it relates to the pursuit of money and power, or the retention of it. The Tories did this to generally deflect from their own appalling record of corruption and criminality. Braverman referring to pro-Palestine marches as hate marches, open Islamophobia. Lee Anderson, openly Islamophobic, taken in by Reform, who push a Islamophobic, bigoted message every day. The message they seeded was foreigner equals bad or foreigner equals criminal. And they put this message out via a number of methods. Number one, their private school mates in the media, happy to spin a yarn for a backhander or a favour. 2, the echo chambers of what I call dimly lit telly for thick fucks, GB News. Their attempt to try and create like a British version of Fox News, but it doesn't fly because most people listen to the BBC. On GB News, them lot are inexplicably given a platform and paid huge sums to essentially use their shows as propaganda outlets, despite many of them being elected members of Parliament. How this is allowed, I do not know, but it is contributing to the problem. Now, they're very careful to keep their hands clean, but a number of them not their noses, if rumours are to be believed. They get around getting arrested for incitement by, being rich and going to private school, but also by claiming that they're just asking questions, the Republican handbook. But what this ultimately is in my view, stochastic terrorism. Stochastic terrorism is targeted political violence that's been instigated by hostile public rhetoric, which is directed at a group or an individual. Unlike incitement terrorism, it's accomplished by using indirect, vague or coded language that allows the instigator to plausibly disclaim responsibility for any resulting violence. Sound familiar? That applies to people like Farage, Lawrence Fox, Darren Grimes, Katie Hopkins, Tommy Robinson, Andrew Tate, the list goes on. Which brings me neatly onto conspiracy theories. The last government failed to curb them, both the theories themselves and the prominent theorists. And why? Because they wanted people to believe anything. Because that benefits them. And then what do you get? A narrative carefully constructed, a scapegoat systematically generated, an angry mob mobilised, and then a catalyst for all hell to break loose. It's the Bannon playbook, an ironically imported construct, but it's fine because it's from a white Western country, so it's palatable to them. It's no coincidence that him, Hopkins, etc. are all in bed with Trump. You see, it's very profitable to all that are involved in generating it. But it's the public who have to live with the consequences, the risk of death or injury from the hate crimes that ensue when public order inevitably breaks down. And in this case, the people that had to bear the brunt of it were a community that had just lost 3 little girls in a violent crime. They had to face bust-in Tommy Robinson supporters carrying crates of tinnies, coked off their nut, destroying their local community. But this lot don't give a shit about that. They just sit back and rub their hands in glee, as poorer people were basically played like puppets. It's classic divide and conquer, and it'd freely be called terrorism if it was carried out by a prominent Muslim. Ideologically, it's just another cheek of the arse. But because the perpetrators are rich and white, Nothing happens. We've always economically benefited from immigration in Britain, so there's very little in the way of non-racist arguments against it. Many of the arguments are framed as concerns. Rich, powerful people talk of the working classes and our concerns as if they know them. But those concerns are planted and seeded systematically by them, by the powerful, to generate division, fear, and ultimately control. Crimes committed by ethnic minorities are relatively low, but the crimes of ethnic minorities and immigrants are highly publicised, disproportionately so. It's not a surprise considering the narrative that I've spoken of. We have a bought billionaire press that can essentially do what it wants because it's above even the government and the law in Britain. They share agendas. Truth is, the asylum system fell into disrepair because the Tory government refused to open safe routes and effectively process applications. Why? Because they wanted to appeal to the far right and they couldn't be seen as lenient. What they did instead, in many cases, is left those that did come here in a concentration of numbers in camps and implemented the old Boer War method, where they just let nature take its course and let people die of pestilence or suicide. They let asylum seeker children get trafficked and disappeared, knowing that a public that they've encouraged to dehumanise these people wouldn't bat an eyelid. They did this because for the last however many years the Tories were basically run by Farage, but they failed because we are not what they tell us we are. By perpetrating this idea, the people are just concerned or they're not being listened to. They're trying to elicit sympathy for mob rule that they've created. They have encouraged a group of people, statistically, globally known to be violent, men, and radicalised them to attack a specific scapegoat. There's already a global male violence epidemic, the stats prove it. And these men are looking for anything else to blame for their disillusionment but themselves. So they blame women and love Tate, or they blame Muslims and love Farage. And these particular men that I speak of are of low status. But what do their rich puppeteers get? More money, more power, more status. Fuck the effects on society, right? And as a further insult, these upper class souls have the barefaced gall to tell working class people it's in their nature to be bigoted. Fuck that. It is on every level a con. These disillusioned angry men are just pawns for rich men who use them as henchmen to do their bidding. And I'm sickened that they fall for it time and time again. The obvious con artists and their paid scallies just repeatedly get away with it. This guy, unspeakably rich, talking about the elite. You are the fucking elite. You generated the narrative. I don't have anywhere near their status, their power, or their money. But I see them for what they are, and I'll use the platform that I have to call out their manufactured race and class wars, trying to silence people from asking questions. The Daily Mail influenced the judge to reveal the name of a 17-year-old suspect. And they'll just pivot now to attacking, African people. Because they won't see the suspect as really British if he's got a different skin colour. For this lot, it was just an excuse to be violent, to be bigoted, to fill their pathetic, empty lives with someone to blame or someone to hate. Tragedies are just an excuse for them to have a target for it all, frankly. But I know, and I think most other people with sense know, who spent the best part of the last 8 years seeding this in people. Because just like the rioters, those scumbags don't care about women or little girls or Britain, just what they can get out of it.